We all have that JRPG, that one JRPG, you know, the one that just takes over your entire life. And when you finish, you get this feeling of emptiness. Now imagine having the ability to completely erase your memory of that game, only to experience it for the very first time all over again. That's what today's video is all about. Those JRPGs that left such an impact on you that you give anything to have the chance to experience them all over again for the very first time. I've been playing JRPGs for over 30 years, and there are countless times that I've had experiences that I know would never be matched. If you've ever had experiences like this, let me know in the comments below what game you wish you could play for the very first time again. So strap yourself in as we talk about 10 JRPGs that I would love to be able to experience for the very first time all over again.
Just as I expected.
To start off with today's list, we're jumping in with an absolute classic, Tales of Symphonia, originally released for the GameCube in 2003. The Tales series has always been such an important part of my life. And while Tales of Symphonia wasn't the first game I played in the series, it would be hard to say that Symphonia didn't have the greatest impact on me in the series. It was an experience that I had never had up until that point, with the real-time battle system, characters, and a certain story aspect that I won't go into for huge spoiler reasons. Tales of Symphonia is one of those games that kept me enthralled from start to finish. And when you find out that you have not only one world to explore, but a whole second world, I remember thinking when I first played it, this is it. This is peak gaming. Nothing is ever going to be better than this. Of course, I was wrong, and since then, I have played better games, even within the same series, but at the time, Tales of Symphonia was a game that really stood out for me. This was actually the game I bought a GameCube for. I had played it over at a friend's place originally when he rented it, but a few years later, when I had bought my own GameCube, I had to buy Symphonia along with it. I have since played through the game at least 10 times, but that first time was by far the best experience I had with the game. And I would give anything to be able to relive that initial experience just one more time. JRPGs are often considered very serious experiences, but this one was more silly than anything. Threads of Fate, also known as Do Prism in Japan, released in 1999 for the PlayStation. It was one of those games that just surprised me around every turn. From the strange mechanics of transforming into monsters to the lighthearted and whimsical story to hopping around Mel's atelier, around almost every turn, Threads of Fate seemed to do something to just make me smile. It's been such a long time since I played a game that just made me incredibly happy, and I would love to get the chance to do that all over again. Threads of Fate featured two different characters that seemed to play incredibly different. As mentioned previously, one, named Rue, got the ability to transform into all different kinds of monsters, whereas the second, Mint, got the ability to cast several different elements of spells. Each character had entirely different storylines and reasons for adventuring. Multiple protagonists have been done since, but none have really given that same feeling. Like many other games on this list, I first experienced Threads of Fate by renting it when I was a teenager. This was one of those games I rented multiple weeks in a row just to be able to finish the game. Luckily, as I got older, it did end up getting a re-release on the PlayStation Classics for the PS3, so if I ever get the desire to replay the game, I don't have to go hunting for an original copy. Especially considering the cost of retro games these days, ugh. Even if I do replay the game again, I doubt it's gonna feel the same as the first time. I got that opportunity to whack those tadpoles with a giant axe.
They're weak. Don't let your guard down. Take that! Finish it for me.
Despite what the battle theme says, you probably saw this one coming. Persona 5, originally released in 2016. Lists like this just wouldn't be complete without having one of the most popular JRPGs these days. Persona 5 was one of those games that hooked me right from the get-go. You start off as a hero that's falsely accused of a crime, then you get shipped off to a foreign country and treated terribly by your landlord, who also doubles as a coffee shop owner. But while the game starts pretty dark and depressing, it gets progressively better as you meet new friends, build your relationship with those friends, seduce the local nurse, and fall in love with your teacher. Wait a minute. Yeah, Persona 5 has a bit of questionable content, but it was a great experience overall. I had an amazing time playing it from beginning to end, all 135 hours of it. This wasn't the first Persona game I played, or even my favorite Persona game of all time, but it's probably the one I have the fondest memories of. The cast is probably the most diverse, and Persona 5 easily had one of the most engaging stories with some of the best twists. The only reason it isn't my favorite Persona game is the fact that it wasn't a murder mystery like Persona 4. I really like my murder mysteries. My only regret with Persona 5 is the fact that I will never get to relive the experience for the first time ever again. The emotions that went through me while playing Persona 5 for the first time have been unmatched, and I've since been searching for something that comes even close to that. I guess I could finally play Persona 5 Royal, but while it adds a few things that are new, it still won't hit that level of joy I got in my very first playthrough of the vanilla version. JRPGs and adventuring. You can't have one without the other. It's like peanut butter and jam, spaghetti and meatballs, pancakes and maple syrup, and most of all, shinky JRPGs and hitting that subscribe button. Okay, but seriously, when it comes to JRPGs and adventuring, the most iconic has to be Grandia, originally released in 1997. Now, I've talked about Grandia several times before on the channel. I hold this game in such high regard, and it is among my top 5 JRPGs of all time. No JRPG, or any game in general, has encapsulated the feeling of adventure like Grandia has. You start off as a little kid named Justin, who wants to adventure just like his father, but is stuck in his little podunk portside town. But one thing leads to another, and he finally gets to go on his own adventure. The best part is that you're basically playing a naive child. Justin doesn't know anything about the world, which feeds into the entire experience. Everything new just blows his mind. Everything is so spectacular to him, and things that you would think would be incredibly obvious don't exactly come to Justin because he's just realizing it for the first time. I've never found anything that makes me so excited to move on to the next area as much as Grandia did. If you haven't played Grandia, you owe it to yourself to play the game, and if you do, please don't look up a guide, don't look up tips and tricks, just play it completely blind. That is easily the best way to experience Grandia. Enjoy the adventure just like Justin does, without having any idea of what's next, and you'll realize just how great of an RPG Grandia is. Also, Grandia 2 is great as well. Get the HD collection. You will not regret it. You knew I wouldn't be able to do a list without mentioning Ys at least once. And of course, I'm going to have to mention my favorite game in the entire franchise. Released initially on PC in 2005, Ys the Oath in Felghana is a remake of Ys 3, and is easily the definitive way that a remake should be done. The original Ys 3 was, honestly, it's kind of bad. It was difficult, it was frustrating. Honestly, I didn't find it fun in any sense of the word. The only thing that it had going for it was the soundtrack, which was phenomenal. The remake enhanced every single aspect of the game. The gameplay turned into like an isometric 3D beat 'em up with great platforming, Metroidvania-esque exploring, various upgrades, and the soundtrack is easily one of the best things to come out of Falcom. Yes, the original had a great soundtrack, but the remake takes that to a whole new level. The difficulty of Oath in Felghana is still there, but it's been upgraded to the point where it no longer feels unfairly difficult. If you get a game over in Oath in Felghana, it's not due to game design, but due to making a mistake you were in full control of. It's such an incredible improvement. Sure, I might be incredibly biased since the Oath in Felghana was not only the first Ys game I played, but it was my introduction to Falcom when I played it on the PSP. For the purposes of this list, I don't think this is just limited to me wanting to experience the game again for the first time, but I want to experience my introduction to Falcom again. ever since I started this game, Falcom has moved up to being one of my favorite game developers of all time. And you know what? This won't be the only time they're mentioned on today's list. Can you guess what game from Falcom is going to be mentioned later? If you could turn a beautiful anime into a JRPG, what would it look like? For me, that would be Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch, initially released in 2013 for the PlayStation 3. Well, actually, that's not true. It was originally released in 2010 on the DS, but that version didn't leave Japan. So the PlayStation 3 localization in 2013 was my first experience with the game. This was my first experience with the Ghibli art style. Yeah, I have no idea how to pronounce that, and I don't really watch anime, so regardless of how it's pronounced, Hayao Miyazaki has created one of the most beautiful art styles in any media ever. Ni no Kuni used this art style, and initially this is what drew me in towards the game. I'd never seen a game that looked as beautiful as that. I was looking forward to jumping into a happy, joyful world. Now, the game isn't completely beautiful. The story takes some pretty dark turns, but I think that's really what caught my interest and made me realize just how special of an experience I was about to enjoy. In Ni no Kuni, you take the role of Oliver, a happy child in a quiet country town, who meets a magical anteater named Mr. Drippy. Okay, he's a fairy, but he looks like a mini lamp-faced anteater. After certain events happen, Oliver gets isekai'd to a magical world full of talking animals and other fairy tale creatures. Ni no Kuni was kind of a modern take on Pokemon if it was an action RPG, and this is something I'll always appreciate. It came out at a time where JRPGs were few and far in between. During the PlayStation 3 era, there was some kind of vendetta against JRPGs, so Ni no Kuni was a nice breath of fresh air. Not only because it was a JRPG in a time where we were starved for the genre, but it was bright and colorful, and with a musical score done by Joe Hisaishi, it made for a wonderful experience that I don't think I'll ever get the opportunity to feel ever again. By the way, my pick for number 1 on this list may not be my most replayed JRPG, but is definitely one I wish I had a Men in Black neuralizer for. And no, it's probably not the one you're thinking of.
Let's do this!
I told you Falcom would be mentioned again, but I bet you didn't think it would be this game. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, initially released in 2004, was not my first Trails game. I actually started with Trails of Cold Steel, but the Sky arc is by far my favorite arc that the 20-year franchise has offered. Now, I say Trails in the Sky, but I'd love to be able to experience the entire franchise from scratch, because it's among one of the best long-running stories ever told. I know I've ripped on the Trails series before, but as a whole, I absolutely adore it. Trails in the Sky, though, is amazing, and I can't really go into details about why I would love to erase my memory to be able to experience the game for the first time all over again because of all the crazy twists and spoilers, but I adore Estelle, and to this day, I think she is the best protagonist in any JRPG ever created. And yes, that includes Reen, I achieved victory through the power of friendship, Schwarzer, and Lloyd, no barrier can withhold me, Bannings. Not to say they're terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but Estelle is just on a whole other level. This is also why I am incredibly excited for the upcoming remake of Trails in the Sky, which is looking like possibly the best game that Falcom has ever put out with a budget to match. I cannot wait to re-experience Trails in the Sky through the remake. It may not be the first time, but I feel like it's going to feel new enough to be an experience all in its own. If you've never played this one, I'm honestly kind of jealous of you. What I wouldn't give to be able to play Star Ocean 2 for the first time all over again. Star Ocean, the second story, originally released in 1998, was my very first experience with Tri-Ace. I think. I don't remember if it was my first experience or it was Valkyrie Profile. Hey, give me a break, it was over 20 years ago. My memory's a little bit foggy. Anyways, back to Star Ocean 2. This game was a step up for me in the art of action RPGs. It was fast-paced, it had a killer soundtrack by Motoi Sakuraba, and a cast of characters that were full of depth and humor. To this day, I still see people claiming that this is among one of the best written JRPGs of all time, and I can't even disagree with it. It's not even just the story that made this so incredibly fantastic. When I first played Star Ocean 2, it was before I had regular access to the internet, so all the tricks and tips that you hear about regularly, I had no idea about. I still remember when I opened my first goodie box, and I got the Sword of Marvels within the first few hours of the game. Imagine the look on my teenage face when seeing an 1100 attack power weapon appear in my inventory mere hours into the game. It absolutely blew my mind because I had no idea that was possible. These days, much like the previously mentioned Oath and Felghana, Star Ocean 2 received a remake that improved everything with the game. Sure, it wasn't as substantial since Star Ocean 2 was already an amazing game, but it added some brand new post-game content and a graphical overhaul as well as new battle mechanics. I'd love to be able to play this again for the first time because Star Ocean 2 was one of the iconic games that I grew up with. So if you haven't played it yet, you need to play it. And please, let me live through your first experience vicariously. I miss Star Ocean 2.
Yes! Go! Volcano!
The Legend of Dragoon never really made the biggest noise when it came out, but honestly, it kinda made a substantial echo. This was actually the first game I ever bought with my own money at my very first job. I remember at the time no one had ever heard of it. It was such a quiet launch. I didn't see it in any gaming magazines, not mentioned in any review shows on TV. Nowadays, however, it's probably one of the most demanded games to receive a remaster or a remake. When I started playing The Legend of Dragoon, I loved it. It was my first experience with the timing-based battle system as opposed to just pressing confirm in battle or a typical action RPG. Looking back at it now, a lot of my love of this game comes from the innocence of me as a JRPG newbie, but it definitely has its fair share of problems such as a shoddy translation, frustrating item limits, or certain characters just being absolutely terrible. I'm looking at you, magically useless Kongol. However, with that being said, that's why I wish I could play this for the first time all over again. I adored this game the first time, and I want to experience that love of the game all over again. Lately, I've been replaying it through the Severed Chains PC port, and it feels much more natural as if this is how it should have been in the first place. If you have a hankering to play Legend of Dragoon, be sure to check that out because it's absolutely the best experience of the game that you could ever have. Now, it's time for number 1. Honestly, it's not going to surprise you. It should be obvious for any JRPG fan. Come on, there's no way this is a surprise. This is the GOAT of all JRPGs, Final Fantasy VII. Some say it's overrated, some might say it's not as good as people say, but there's a reason this is one of the most cherished JRPGs of all time. Final Fantasy VII, initially released in 1997, almost single-handedly changed the worldwide JRPG landscape for so many reasons. The world was huge and beautiful. The characters to this day are some of the most loved in any genre of game. And sorry for spoilers, but come on, if you don't know that spoiler by this time, I'm impressed. But the death of Aerith is more than likely most of our first experience with death, and the most impactful. Most video game deaths at this point were inconsequential. Maybe an NPC you grew attached to, or a death at the end of the game where somebody sacrifices themselves. But until this point, we never really had an iconic playable character that passed away mid-game, and to mention in a full FMV cutscene. I remember exactly where I was when I first experienced that cutscene. I was at my friend's house because that's where I first played Final Fantasy VII. I played it in short bursts when I visited him because I didn't have my own PlayStation. I must have been about 14 or 15 at the time, and the moment that I saw Sephiroth penetrate Aerith with his Masamune, I was in tears. Come on, get your head out of the gutter, stop laughing, I'm being emotional here. I was so incredibly upset when it happened. And I know my friend was just sitting there, waiting, just to see my reaction. This was my very first time I actually felt honest-to-goodness emotions from a video game. Could you imagine the opportunity to experience that all over again for the first time? Now, there is the remake series of Final Fantasy VII, and that is almost like re-experiencing the game from scratch, but nothing is like your first time. So there you have it, 10 JRPGs that I wish I could experience for the first time all over again. What JRPGs do you wish you could experience for the first time all over again? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and before you head off, check out this video right here. This has been Shinky, thanks so much for watching, and until next week's video, have a wonderful day.